One of the things I want to talk about is what you just described is a model for building a business that the investor's perception of it changed. The model has always worked, right? You've
Right.
shown that. But the way that companies are built is going to change, as you're describing as well. And so whether that's the way we fund the companies or the way that we acquire users, the way that teams work from kind of a productivity standpoint, remote versus not, like how do you think about the big trends there of what's going to change? And let's maybe kind of focus on like, what do you think is almost guaranteed to change versus the things that people are like, 1% chance it might change, but if it changes, it'll have a huge impact on the world. But what are the guaranteed changes for you?
Yeah. I think the one guarantee I see is that the cost of uh, labor of any kind is going to go down. That's guaranteed. We're probably going to see that hit on labor costs and people's ability to make money go down for the next 5 or 10 years. We see it's cyclical. It happens every time shit hits the fan, so to speak. I don't know how many shits have hit the fan this time. And how many more might come. My count is about 3 to 5, depending on how you think about chain reactions. But I was just reading a paper earlier today that was talking about we don't even know the long-term impact. And it was a whole study on that just came out this morning. And I'm like, okay, well, and I'd throw it back at you and be like, what do you know? Because you probably have a whole different lens than I do. But I think from a building business operator standpoint, the cost of hiring people is going to go down. The funny thing is the cost of marketing, I think, is going to go up. And you can almost guarantee that. And that's just the cost of every marketing channel or tactic or approach to marketing has consistently always gone up, especially compared to when a channel first starts. And these are things I think about a lot, having seen so many different marketing channels evolve and sort of cost more over time. And I don't just mean like channels where like you can pay for the traffic, like Facebook ads or something like that. I even mean things like, how easy it was to get on Dig's homepage back in the day and how much harder it got over time as a bunch of us figured it out and started monetizing the attention we had on there. And you're seeing the same with Twitter and things like that as well, where I think Twitter's a fascinating one because the paid side of it has never really worked out, and I don't know if it ever will, but the organic sort of social media-ish aspect of it is incredible in terms of reach and brand building and all that stuff. So my theory is that, and this is like tried and true if you talk to any marketer, that like every channel gets costly over time, and it gets harder and harder to keep your costs down, and because you have to learn new tricks. Because what happens is as people hop onto the channel, more tactics are utilized. They get drowned out. They get copied. I mean, this is marketing, right? It happens all the time. The good news is there's new channels and new effective ways to even merge channels together to make things work. So that you can keep costs down, but that means that the sophistication level of your sort of marketing and your mix and all that stuff goes up. So what's not going to change is, I think, for a long time, costs of labor, any kind of labor, is going to go down. There's many reasons for that. One of the main ones being people are now used to not having to work from an office. Like just people, meaning everybody. They're used to it, whether they like it or not like it, or whether their kids are home and all that. I'm not talking about that. They're just used to it because they have to do it. Business wouldn't work if all of us couldn't figure this out. We figured it out. I mean, in fact, like I have some really good data that shows that like there's a massive spike in people looking for Zoom sort of Zoom-like product, video conferencing products. That spike has completely died and is back to the normal levels that it was. So it's literally like whoop, and then like came down over the last like 3 or 4 months. And so revenues of some of the sort of newer players spiked and are now kind of at a more steady pace. Obviously, they captured whatever they were going to capture, and now there's a lot more to do. I've seen jumps in ARR of like 5x for some of these companies, not counting Zoom even, just some of the smaller ones. And when you think of it like that, it's like we've gotten used to it. That's my point. Like the buying cycle, like we've gotten used to it. You can look at software buying cycles to see what we've gotten used to. We've gotten used to that, which means that we're probably going to be able to hire people from anywhere a lot more than we were used to as a society as a whole. I mean, I've been working remotely for 17 years. I used to say I don't wish it upon anybody. Now it's upon everybody, right? And a lot of the things that I do, I feel like for myself and my businesses, I don't like being dogmatic about recommending it as what someone else should do, because I think people are different. The way they want to work, the way they want to do things are different. For example, I'll give one before I kind of sort of, stop on this one is like, I am super surprised at the amount of Zoom fatigue and complaining about it. And the reason I'm surprised about it is because you can turn off the video. You can just turn off the video. I mean, I was doing this stuff back in, again, I'm going to date myself, but back in the day, 17 years ago, I'd hop on a Skype and hit the voice button or whatever they had because they didn't have video and just talk to someone. I did not lose anything. I have relationships from back then of people I've worked with for 3 or 4 companies. I barely met them in person. Some of them I've never met in person, right? At my new company, I'm trying to think, who have I met in person? There's, I think, only 2 people out of a 15-person company that I've met in person. One's my co-founder, and the others are head of engineering that I've worked with across 3 companies for 8 years. But I haven't seen them in like 2 years or a year and a half in person, right? But we don't get on video calls unless like they're with the whole team or something. It's usually like voice. So anyway, what I think is happening is that the way of working is completely going to change. And it changed because we got a big shot in the arm, and now we have to do things. And the implications of that are, the first one being, I think, because of the other factors that are kind of happening in the world, labor is going to be cheaper. And then when you add in remote work and companies like being super cool with it now compared to what they were 4 months ago, 5 months ago, things are going to be cheaper to build, cheaper to make, cheaper to do things.
Yeah, and so I guess one of the things that's interesting about this is, of course, marketing gets more expensive. The cost of building goes down. Also, there seems to be this trend of education where there's more and more people who have the skills necessary to write code, market, whatever we see. Does that ultimately lead to more innovation? Or is it hard to predict just because we have more people who are skilled, more people who are educated on these certain bodies of work, it doesn't necessarily actually lead to more successful companies?
I like the question. I think back to your prior, if you take the prior thesis of like, look, there was like a much clearer way where it was one path to build a large business, which was you raise money. Now there's a second way, which is don't raise any money. Figure it out yourself. So the explosion of self-funded companies is immense. It's incredible. So I think there are going to be more successful companies in the eyes of the operators. So a VC might look at a certain company making a couple $1 million a year, never going to make more money, or maybe will make 4 in 10 years, right? Go from 2 to 4 in 10 years. But the operator, if the operator is operating with a less than 5-10 person company like there and is happy with that sort of growth, I mean, they could take home $1 million, $2 million, right, in the next 10 years every freaking year. It's like the new doctor's office. It's like the new dentist. It's like the new sort of small business, basically, is all these self-funded software businesses in every niche, every category, and this is happening. There's going to be way more of that. Are those companies innovative? Very rarely, almost never, because they don't have the R&D budget, if you want to call it that, to go throw into innovation prior to revenue. So innovation happens at a slower pace and over time. If you look at sort of most of the innovation that's out there, the fact that more people are skilled, you would assume that there would be more innovation. I think there's gonna be not as much increase in innovation as we might have expected, because there's a lot more sort of mimicking, copycatting, at best being inspired, and we see very little sort of creativity around the solution that you're trying to sort of build for a customer. Because if you can solve it without innovation, why wouldn't you, right? And in fact, all this knowledge makes people think more like that. Because like, well, we can try that thing over there. We can try that thing over there. It's not our thing. It might work in our market. It's a different market. We're going to try the thing. And the ability to see what everyone's doing is something that people don't talk about as much as sort of other things. So like, for example, I think the thing that's changed dramatically is like the tooling to like see which apps are charting in the different app stores. That's like new stuff. It's 5 years old. Like it's not 10 years old. And so our ability to see what other people are doing and imitate it has increased. Our skill set, that means, in my opinion, needs to be a lot lower, or can be a lot lower, to achieve the same amount of sort of growth, or create the same amount of sort of value, just because the knowledge is all out there, and the ability to see what another company's doing is like, you snap your finger, you can go look at a lot of their publicly available data, and there's a lot of it that's available.